Hey, welcome back to the What's Next podcast. Coming to you from beautiful Monterey, California. I've probably said this to you before, but I've got a little massage place here in Monterey, and I run into the most interesting people, and of course I can't talk very much in a massage, so I started this little podcast so I can talk to these amazing people about what they do, and again, today is no different. We've got Mrs. Karenlewis with us today. Karen is... Now, you see I'm in scrubs today because we had to do this on a Sunday because Miss Karen is taking off from Mississippi going home tomorrow, and we had to catch her before she went. Karen, I'm not real familiar with what you do. You're a certified holographic memory resolution practitioner.
Yes.
That's a mouthful.
It is.
Holy guacamole. So, and there was a couple other things I wanted to talk to you about. We talked a little bit while we were doing the massage, and you had said, and I looked it up so I could get a little better numbers, diagnosed with 34 different diseases that were mostly autoimmune.
Yes.
And as we talked, you seem to think that it had a lot to do with like childhood traumas.
Absolutely.
Oh, we got some talking to do today. I'm
Yay.
excited.
Me
so tell
too.
me, what is this certified? Tell me about this.
Well, holographic memory resolution is a big word,
Sure
and we kind of break it down. Holographic means each portion contains the entire thing.
Okay.
And so we're talking about trauma.
Right.
And then memory, the trauma memory, and our body holds the trauma memory. I've heard another one of your podcasts about The Body Keeps the Score, the book by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk.
Sure.
And I've trained with him for over a year.
Have you really?
Yes, it's
Wow.
certified trauma practitioner with him. And so he believes that the trauma memories are stuck in our bodies.
Sure.
And so that's holographic, and then memory, and then resolution. We don't necessarily delete, we just resolve it so that the body is no longer triggered by the memory.
You just pack it down there a little deeper,
No,
right?
you pack it. The trauma packs it down. I love that. The trauma packs it down because we can't handle it all at the same time.
Right.
And so, and each trauma packs on top and packs on top. So working with children, they release their traumas very quickly.
It's not a whole lot of stacked up.
Right. But we
okay.
as adults release them much more slowly.
Yeah.
Often, depending, on everybody's different.
Yeah.
And this was developed about 30 years ago by Brent Baum,
Okay.
who was a certified addictions counselor. And he was clinical director at the TO Center and later at Cottonwood, or I forget which one's which. But he developed it for recidivism from alcoholism, and drug abuse. And so I related so much to your story and the
Right.
beautifulness of that.
Yeah, alcoholism. Now we're in my park, right?
Yeah.
There's so much trauma
Yeah.
that goes along with that, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
But the alcohol and drugs are to soothe the body.
Sure.
To handle the traumas
Right.
that we experience.
Right.
And then, like you say, it kind of perpetuates and causes its own trauma. The frustration over what we're doing to ourselves, but yet needing to soothe the trauma. And so this work is excellent for alcohol and drug, and also for veterans, anybody with PTSD.
Yeah. So when I talk about alcoholism, I think that is two parts. There's the alcohol, and then there's the ism. Even though I'm 40 years sober, there's still a lot of alcoholic tendencies, not tendencies. That would mean I'm drawing towards the alcohol, but there's things about alcoholics that still seem to resonate with me.
Yeah.
And I think you may be touching on something there with that packed down childhood trauma, whatever that is, and then combine that with alcoholism.
Exactly.
You're going to have a lot of that.
Exactly.
So
We have to soothe somehow when we
Right.
experience any kind of trauma. And traumas are anything that diverts your normal path. Anytime, my words, not necessarily Brent Baum's, but my words are anytime we go, and take a quick breath, our body takes a picture of everything about the event. The sights, the smells, the feels, the wind direction, anything. It takes a picture. It creates like an icon, and puts a little bitty image in the body somewhere.
Interesting.
And so the work we do is to help you find those images and convince the subconscious that you're no longer experiencing that. Because the subconscious, it's the amygdala. The amygdala, that back old part of the brain, is the part that gets to decide. If I walk in a room and I see something that reminds me of a childhood trauma, the amygdala immediately activates and says, this is too dangerous for the body to go forward. And so there's no cognitive.
Right.
We've done quantitative EEG brain studies to show that when this part back here is activated, there's very little activity here. And this is where you make your real cognitive, intelligent decisions.
I see. Right.
And so what the amygdala does, it shoots cortisol and adrenaline down to the body, which means there's not a lot of anything to function to help this part, prefrontal cortex, function. So the adrenaline and cortisol shoots down, and that's for our fight or flight. That's how we were made. So the adrenaline and cortisol can get us out of there in a big hurry, and if we can't flee, we have extra strength. We can move cars or do whatever we need to do.
Yeah.
So that's how it functions. And with our QEEG brain studies, one particular client had extreme activity here. Right behind that right ear is where post-traumatic stress disorder shows up in brain scans often. And we did studies of the brain, the QEEG, which is about 40 times more stronger than a regular EEG.
I see.
It does handles a lot more of the activities of the brain.
Right.
And in his case, he had a lot of activity, just a whole lot of firing going on back here, and nothing going to that prefrontal cortex. And he was making terrible decisions.
Right.
He was 55, and we have permission to talk about him, even though, of course, I won't use his name.
Sure.
But after one HMR session, very significant difference in the activity in the PTSD level and the prefrontal cortex, which is just another example. You know, we've been working to show the science behind it because we need to. Because holographic memory resolution, like you say, is a strange name, hard to understand.
Yeah. You know, it's funny that you say that because I have had some emotional breakdowns on my table, you know.
Yeah.
And usually when I'm doing that, I have my hands on their skull from behind, and I'm working that through. And as I'm massaging that, people that have been to war for too long or childhood traumas, it almost feels like there's night crawlers like underneath the skin. There's so much going on there, you know. So I massage that, and I start trying to get that blood and get that stuff to release. And sometimes it breaks into somebody starting to cry.
Yeah. Helps them
whether
release.
It's dropping the shoulders or whether, but I've always noticed that with the veterans more than anything, where you could really feel that. I don't know, it's probably muscular or blood flow or something in there, but once you start breaking that up, you know way more about this than I do. So.
Well, like we talked a little bit yesterday, that icon has to go somewhere in the body.
Yeah.
And we call it an energetic blockage.
I see.
It goes in the body, it blocks, in my words, oxygen and the flow of nourishing body fluids.
Sure.
And it creates a blockage. And we talked a little bit about fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
And
got that here too.
Yeah, fibromyalgia. I was that's one of my diagnoses. And to me, fibromyalgia is when you do this. That's your defense protection. You get your shoulders, anytime something is scary, you get your shoulders to your ear.
Yes.
And you hold them there. And when you do it enough and you're triggered by enough things in your environment, you do it way too often.
Yeah.
And I found that fibromyalgia for me was relieved just simply by moving.
Just by moving.
I did a lot of swimming. But you're afraid to move because you're protecting yourself.
Yeah, right.
In my own example of childhood trauma, I was triggered by green leather chairs. That's one place where I was abused, was a green leather chair.
Right.
And every time I saw a green leather chair, I did this.
But you don't even know why.
No,
Oh, that's
absolutely.
crazy.
Didn't know why.
Right.
Because I did not get into any of this work and understanding my childhood trauma until I was 55.
Right.
And I'm 73 now. And have been doing this work, helping to coach people to resolve their own trauma, because all we do is ask questions, and they tune into their own body and resolve it.
What's next? What's next?
Yeah. What's your body ready to do now?
Right.
And that infinite wisdom is amazing, because if you and I got to an event that you were not prepared for, the best example or explanation I have with clients is they usually deal with shame first. And they're not going to come to me and say, I need help with my shame. That's not, it's anger or things that are affecting their relationship, and shame is only their relationship with themselves.
The poor probably wouldn't even know what they're looking for at that point.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
But if we start dealing with things and I say, okay, where in your body do you feel this? Do you feel a problem? What's your body ready to work on right now? And we get to shame. And I do great detail with them the difference in shame and guilt. Guilt is you did something wrong.
Right.
Shame is your very being is wrong.
There's a very fine line between that, I would imagine.
Yeah. And we don't come to this earth with that kind of shame.
Right.
That shame is put on us by other people.
Yeah.
So that's part of our work, is saying, when you think of your shame, put it outside your body.
Sure.
What does it look like? And they describe it. Who contributed to that? And it's amazing who they line up. And that's so important for their subconscious to say, this is not me.
Sure.
Somebody did this to me, or said this to me, and I believed it was true about me. So shame often needs to be released, you can understand, before we get to anger or fear or some of the other emotions. Because I have to believe I have a right to be angry at someone for what they did to me.
Right.
And I don't when I'm full of shame.
Well, I know people with fibromyalgia, and sometimes it's disabling. And they take medicine after pharmaceutical, and it just doesn't seem to work, makes them worse. And you're saying that it's more of just a physical trauma that's in their body.
That's my personal belief,
Sure,
and I don't have a medical background.
No, right.
I'm a CPA by background.
So if it doesn't work for you, I can help you with your books.
That's right. But I was declared by 2 rheumatologists to be 100% disabled.
Wow.
And I had 34 disease diagnoses, and that was 16 years ago.
And that was in your 50s or 60s?
Yeah,
50s,
that was 55.
50s, okay.
55.
That's when that went down.
Yep, and I think I told you that's the first time I realized the love of God.
Yeah.
Even though I grew up Baptist, I was baptized at age 7. I went to church 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
But I understood the wrath of God, the fear of God. That was the Southern Baptist and my mother's background. And my father had severe PTSD from World War II.
Right.
That's one reason the veterans are so heavy on my heart. We really want to get this work to the veterans.
Right. You're working with the veterans, aren't you?
We're trying to work more with the veterans, but that's our goal. We are in Angola State Penitentiary. We have a group of trustees who are trained to do this in the penitentiary now.
Wow.
Which we're just thrilled about.
And you're bringing the Bible in with it.
Well, New Orleans is interesting. It's one of the largest maximum security prisons in the United States in Angola, but they have Baptist Theological Seminary there.
I see.
They can graduate from a seminary program if they want to. And one of my former partners, when I was doing HMR, when she was in the public, is a chaplain there now.
Oh, wow.
And she is the one training and working with the trustees.
Yeah.
So they are lifers, the ones with whom she's working.
Well, it's a different thing now that we don't have psychiatric wards. There's a lot of people that just get shuffled right into the prison.
Yeah, especially Louisiana.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Really?
And life is life in Louisiana.
Really?
Yep.
There's no parole. There's no good time, right?
Which is good and bad when
Yeah.
you're trying to develop a trauma therapy. This is excellent for prisons because again, for recidivism.
What does that mean? I'm sorry.
That means going back to what you were doing before.
I see. Okay.
Just like if you were alcohol or drugs.
Right.
You were doing it and you get better and then you go back. That's recidivism.
Sure.
And with prisons, we like to get into the prison system because if they don't heal their personal traumas that are the reason they got into the prison often, they're going to go back into the same environment and the same triggers.
Same triggers and start using again or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we love getting into the prison system before their parole, particularly.
Where they don't have access to whatever that may trigger them, get them. Oh, that's very interesting. So walk me through that. Where do you start with somebody that comes in?
So you start with what's a safe place for you.
Okay.
And that's just typical of any kind of relaxation technique. But it's your safe place. I ask, again, we ask questions.
Sure.
So I say, what might be a safe place for you today? And it can be real or imagined.
Interesting.
And we have, by the way, 150,000 trauma memories in a software system that's very developed, and it has the answer to all these questions I'll describe to you. And so we're hoping to get patterns. I think I gave you an example. A lot of my clients who have breast cancer had a husband who cheated on them or a mother who didn't want a daughter or didn't show proper love to their daughter.
And that came through as breast cancer.
Right.
Oh,
so this is our goal in analyzing the 150,000 memories, is to see where the patterns are. What was the emotional trauma that caused the problem in the body? Right. So we're very linked to where that trauma gets stuck in the body and what effect it has over time.
Right.
But to back up to your question, I'm bad about, I get on these trails.
That's all right. We're in the right place then.
But to back up to your question, I would say, what might be a safe place for you today? And you start describing, and I said, anything else there? What's the temperature like? What's the weather? You know, how?
Really put them there.
Yeah. And so you get to develop what feels safe for you, and that convinces your own subconscious that I'm okay to relax.
Okay.
And you notice with trauma triggers being when you were using alcohol, you have something that comes up and you just have this urge.
Yeah. Right.
And so this is the opposite of that. This is, I'm calm, I'm quiet, and now my body can speak to me. But that's also one reason veterans and other people have trouble with quiet, calm places, because the old stuff says, oh, I am safe. I can start releasing some of this stuff I've been holding for this long.
Right.
And so you're safe in this environment because we're going to see what your body brings up first. So you do your safe scene, and then I say, what colors remind you of that safe scene? And we have a lot of information about color. The color is the energy frequency that your body needs. You think about a rainbow. The colors are always in the same order.
Sure.
The red has a much faster frequency than the blues and greens. And your body has energy frequency. You know better than I know the energy frequency, the things you talked about in the neck.
Yeah,
right. Going through the body. So we say, what colors would you like to use to remind you of your own safe place? And you name a color. And then we say, what are you noticing in your body? Any tightness or tension or pressure in your body?
With that color, you mean? Or
after you breathe the color, because the colors, and you can use as many as you want.
Right.
The colors tell your body, I am really safe. And your body, so then we say, what do you feel in your body? Any tightness, tension, or pressure? And they'll say, well, all of a sudden when you ask that question, my right elbow started hurting. And so then we have 10 questions. We say, is it inside or outside or both? Is there a shape, a size, or a color?
To that pain?
Is there a weight, a temperature, or a texture? And we get the funniest answers.
Wow, right.
It's a heavy red rock, and it's, and it's hot.
Really?
And they describe it in great detail.
Wow.
The body, the subconscious, knows what is happening in there, in that area that is holding that negative energy from the trauma.
Right.
And so we say, so how young might you be when you first felt that heavy red rock in your right elbow? Is there an age or a number, or does it feel like many times?
Mm.
And they'll say, all of a sudden 4 came up.
4.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know why 4 came
Just
up.
crept up on them, huh? Wow.
The subconscious, we're talking its language. The
That's what I
questions are in the order they are because Brent found out through a lot of trial and error the different parts of the brain that are activated and in the sequence in which they're activated.
Mm-hmm.
So the brain likes saying, oh, you're right here with me.
Wow.
And so then how young might you be? And they say it feels like I'm 4. And where might you be at 4? And I remind them we don't go back through the trauma. That's what's so hugely different about this work than other trauma. We don't have to go through the details. We go until we get to a feeling word. And the feeling words are shame, sadness, anger, fear, lonely or abandoned, sometimes hopeless, helpless.
Mm.
But almost any, think of those words, almost any emotional word you can come up with, you can use one of those, fit it into one of, and we don't ask them to fit it in, whatever word they want to use. If they say freaked out, then freaked out is what we go with.
Mm.
And so, but to back up again, I'm 4. Where might you be at 4? I'm in the kitchen. And I'm not going to go back through the whole memory. We don't
Sure.
have to go. I'll remind them of that.
Right.
What might be happening in the kitchen? I'm hiding under the table.
Right.
Well, what's happening when you're hiding under the table? Well, Mom and Daddy are screaming at each other.
Oh, yeah.
And, okay, we still haven't gotten a feeling
Yeah,
word,
yeah.
you see?
Right.
They're telling the story. And so what happens then when they're screaming at each other? I'm scared. And as soon as we get that clicks on the icon, opens the entire program. That's the hologram.
Mm.
The entire
Okay,
event is
sure.
available then for healing. And so we say, okay, instead of that happening at 4, what would you love to have happen at 4? Now remember, the subconscious does not know the difference in actuality and imagination.
Mm.
So what would you love to be doing it for?
Right.
And they say, well, I want to be sitting on a park bench with my grandpa.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what else do you want with grandpa? Ice cream. And I love it when they come up with ice cream as their solution because I say, what kind of ice cream? They know exactly, immediately what kind.
Sure.
What kind of toppings do you want on it? Oh, I got to have gummy worms. And I want some sprinkles.
They're right there with
So
Grandpa, aren't they?
we just continue to listen and ask, what else do
Wow.
you need? What else would you love? And often they'll say, oh, I want my dog there with me.
Oh, of course.
And it's just beautiful to see what the subconscious says would make them feel more
Safe.
calm. Yep, safe.
Bring them back into a safe place.
Yep.
Right.
Safe and calm.
Yeah.
So here's the kicker. You have to stay with me.
Yeah.
So what kind of frame do you put around that picture of you with Grandpa on the bench with the ice cream, the
Your
spumoni
dog.
and the gummy worms and the sprinkles and your dog? And they'll say, I think I want a driftwood frame. So it's colors or woods or metallics, gold, silver, pewter, titanium, whatever. So think of all those questions and knowing they're captured in a software system.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be finding out what colors are soothing based on which emotions,
Right.
I believe, when we analyze these.
Yeah.
We're going to learn some stuff.
Yeah. It's almost like a wonderful life. Just taking them from
yeah.
one to the other and just showing them
Yeah.
what you've done or showing them. And then you do what you want with it. But this that's interesting. Yeah.
But see, he needed to resolve what happened at 4 before he could deal with what happened in the war sometimes.
Ah, right.
You know?
Right.
And we wouldn't think that if we stopped and analyzed the situation. We'd go straight to what happened to you in war.
Yeah.
You know, where were you? What happened? Let's go through it and convince you that you're not there anymore.
Right.
And we can't do that.
Sure.
The body can do that. The subconscious and the connection when the body is ready.
Sure.
But often the childhood stuff comes up first. So.
Yeah. Right. Well, that would be the easy thing. Of course, you've just come back from war. Well, that's got to be it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
That makes sense.
Well, and what happens is so many people who are in the Army or in other military had problems in their childhood, either a tough family or lost a family member early or an alcoholic parent or whatever.
Sure.
And that's what else we've worked with. The ACE, are you familiar with the ACE study, the Adverse Childhood Experiences?
No.
It was a study done by Kaiser Permanente, and I believe it was in the 70s. But I think they had 17,000, but it may be a bigger number, huge number of participants. And they studied the things that happened to them in childhood and what happened to them later in life with chronic pain and chronic diseases, and found out there are 8 things that they look for. There used to be 7, but I researched this morning, and there are 8. If you had a number of these in childhood, you were greatly at risk for later disease in your body, chronic pain or chronic diseases. And so one is physical abuse, emotional abuse, and they're defined clearly, sexual abuse of you as a child, violence against your mother, household member with substance abuse, a household member with mental illness, or a household member in prison. That's an interesting combination, isn't it?
Sure is. Yeah.
It really is.
Right.
If you have one of those, there's a risk for your later health.
Yeah.
But if you have 4 or more, you're at extremely high risk of chronic pain, chronic disease. And Kaiser Permanente is a health insurance company, and they wanted to know this.
Sure.
So they're real excited to see anything that can help, particularly with childhood trauma, calm the body.
That's a huge breakthrough for.
It is. So when we did our clinical trials, we were relating it to the ACE study as well. So
it's like AI is almost it has all of the questions and answers. You just put it in there and it sorts it all out for you and tells you. That's really neat. He must have made that. What was the doctor's name that you said did that?
Well, Brent, I don't know the doctor
Brett.
at Kaiser Permanente. Brent Baum is the one who developed this work.
Right.
And then Dr. Mary Gaddy was the primary investigator in our clinical trial that we finally, because it is so strange and so hard to explain.
Yeah.
I mean, you're fooling with colors and your imagination. What do you want? What's safe? Do you want a dog? You want ice cream? You know, it's hard for people to really focus and believe this.
Right.
And believe how well it works.
Right,
but
sure.
I don't have rheumatoid.
It's too simple.
It
can't work. There's just no
exactly.
way that you can just talk to me and all my pain's going to go away. It sounds like snake oil.
And have your body talk back to me.
Exactly.
And tell you what color.
Right.
One of my favorite color stories I've never had but one client who didn't know their color. And I had one client, and I said, what color would you like to frame that new, we call it the reframe, that new event that feels safe to you? And he looked at me and growled and said, I don't even like orange. And I didn't laugh out loud, thank goodness. And I said, I didn't mention orange.
Oh, you didn't? That was what I was thinking.
No. I said, what color would you like to frame that new scene with?
He was having a conversation with himself.
And he said,
I don't even like orange.
I don't even like orange. And I said, well, I didn't mention orange. So you might want to try breathing some orange and see how your body likes that.
Breathing some orange?
Yep.
Tell me about that. What does that mean?
Well, you just imagine orange, the frequency of orange is what your body has come up with, or his body.
Right.
And so you imagine that orange, especially in the place, that right elbow. where that heavy hot rock was.
Right.
And we're finding out that is the energy. You're going to love this statement because you'll just have fun with it.
Yeah.
That is the energy frequency that was severed in your body when you experienced the trauma.
I was going to ask you about that. Why would it be an elbow?
Doesn't have to be. Well,
But I mean,
that's
if
what we're
it
going to
was.
learn with the software analysis.
Yeah,
That's what we
right.
hope to learn. Why would it be an elbow?
Yeah.
If I say, is it inside or outside or both, and they say outside or they say both, my experience with my clients is there is a physical injury with it.
That's
I
what I was
felt
thinking.
trapped
Maybe,
because somebody grabbed my right elbow.
There you go, right.
But if they say it's a heavy red rock, but it's inside, it's rarely a physical exertion from the outside.
Yeah. I've talked about this before in different podcasts, but sometimes when I'm dealing with somebody with a lot of trauma and I start working through their shoulders and I start holding something to try to get a muscle to release, sometimes it'll come back on me and my heart will start going so fast that I have to let go. There's just too much going through me.
Yeah.
It's only happened a few times, but it's intense when I need to let go of somebody like that. There
You're
must be
feeling
going
their
through
energy.
something.
Yep.
Right. And I've gone through stuff, so maybe it's combining or something, or maybe I'm just feeling there,
You're feeling their energy frequency.
Yeah.
You may need to breathe orange.
to breathe some orange and get rid of it.
Or whatever color you need.
Yeah.
But that's really interesting, too, because we know that most of what people release, they release at C7. And you've talked a lot about what you're feeling in the neck and shoulder area.
Yeah.
And if I am working with a client in person, I have my hand on C7 if they're comfortable with it.
Yeah. Sure.
Some people are not. But if they are, then I can tell when the energy releases. And I can tell now whether it's anger or fear or what it shoots out. You understand that. That's what you're
Sure.
feeling that made your heart race.
Yeah.
Same thing.
I almost have
feel
a
it.
feeling that maybe I'm just a little bit of an empath, but at the same time, I don't know what I'm feeling. I can't sort it out. I have no idea. Just too much coming at me. But I don't think not anybody, but a lot of people don't get that through vibrations from another person. Yeah, I don't know. So
We have a lot of massage therapists who use this work.
really,
We have neurologists, we have psychiatrists,
Yeah.
we have anesthesiologists who use it to help relax people before they go into surgery,
Right.
especially
Oh,
if they've
okay.
had more than one.
right,
They need
right.
to really heal the past trauma from the other surgeries
Yeah.
before they go into this one, or
Right.
they're going to carry that same emotion and body reaction from
Yeah.
the surgery into the next one.
Yeah.
So I would love for you to train in HMR.
I would too. That's very interesting stuff.
Yeah, you can train online now.
I could heal better.
Yeah,
I could
absolutely.
heal
Yes.
people better.
Yes. When you feel those things that you feel, you can start asking these questions. We can train you specifically. I'm a supervisor now in the work, so once you train online or in person with Brent, then I work with you. Just the main reason for supervision is to build your confidence, because
Right.
it is so hard to believe it's that simple.
Well, you wouldn't be able to figure out why that energy's coming through. You would just feel it, and then you'd be able to ask the questions.
You'd be able to
sort out
yes.
where it is. I see.
You'd be able
Okay,
to help
right.
them convince their subconscious that whatever that is that's being released really is released, and the color replacement they do keeps from having a void in the body
Yeah.
from the release.
I see. Right.
And so their body functions a whole lot better.
Yeah. I need to know
Afterwards.
way more about this. Now, we talked about how this ties in. Maybe it's just you or the way that it is, but religious. You brought a lot of religion into it, and you're a very religious person. And I asked Wade, he's very religious also, more than I am, to maybe jump in if you got any questions. How do you tie the religion aspect to the spiritual with the energy? I feel more like Buddhist or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When you're dealing with energies, and it's like I'm not really seeing where that transfers over to the Christian side.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Help me.
Well, and when I speak with my preacher about this, he said, I think I need to learn this to help other veterans.
He even wanted to learn it.
And yet the Southern Baptist Convention says we don't fool with this woo-woo stuff. My own mother, at one point, I said, I can help you with your rheumatoid arthritis. And she said, I don't believe in that voodoo stuff you do. So,
because of her Christianity? She was
partially,
afraid it was crossing the line?
Partially.
That's exactly where I'm kind of
Yeah, partially. But Brent Baum, who developed this,
Uh-huh.
is a Jesuit priest.
Really?
On sabbatical.
Okay.
Because the Catholic Church realized he could reach many more people if he was not wearing a collar.
Yeah.
And so we don't tie this in any way with religion because, I'll explain why. Trauma, like I told you with mine, trauma severs our spiritual relationship. It just does. In my case, very specific because I learned the wrath of God, the fear of God, those things. And I thought my earthly father was a representative of my heavenly Father.
Yeah.
And my earthly father was so traumatized by war and had so much anger that when he was in the house, I disappeared, either physically or,
right.
with that.
So you said to me, and it's kind of caught me when we were in the massage room, you knew the love of, or you knew the fear
and the wrath.
You knew the wrath, but you didn't know the love of God.
Right.
Because you didn't have that from your father, and you didn't understand what the love of a father would be.
Exactly.
That was interesting.
Yep. That was powerful. I just got my spirit bumps.
Chime in, my brother. You got anything?
No, I'm
Am I missing anything?
I'm following along, but I come from, I don't come from this background, so I come from a faith background, but I don't come from a massage. I don't come from
energy.
An energy background, so to speak. And I was thinking as the two of you were talking, would it be fair to say that, and I'm just kind of trying to generalize it, put it together, that you go in and help the person identify the memory or the time frame of the memory and what it was that was detrimental to them, and then you help them create a new memory to take its place?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. But what's so empowering for the individual with whom I'm working is they have all the answers.
Right. So it's all through them.
All I do is ask the questions.
So it's not that you're directing them
Yes.
per se to answer a certain question a certain way.
Exactly. Never.
You're
Never.
just giving them the opportunity to look at things from a different view and then collate that information.
Exactly. Giving them enough safety with my voice. And C7, that's a major nurturing point. That's where mothers hold babies. That's where we pat people when they have going funerals. That's a major point.
Right.
But I do it online as well and don't have to have a hand on C7. But that can also help them ground, feel safe. It's all about safety, but not my safety. I don't know what's safe for you.
Sure.
You know what's safe for you.
That's a good point.
And the more I trust you to know what you need, the more you realize, hey, I know what I needed. With my traumas, nobody ever gave me the chance to believe that or see that.
Gotcha. I was thinking also, you had mentioned that that trauma separates you from from God.
Yes, absolutely.
And I always grew up believing that it was sin that separates you.
That's your shame.
That's your shame.
I am wrong. You think it's guilt, but it's your shame. It can be guilt.
Okay. Well, and the shame doesn't necessarily have to be brought on to you by somebody else, but it's something that you can put upon yourself.
Absolutely.
So that when you are dealing with whatever you're dealing with, it's not that you have somebody to blame and point a finger at and say, there's the problem. Because sometimes that's going to be a mirror.
Yes.
Under those circumstances.
Yes.
Interesting.
Beautiful point.
Interesting.
Thank you for that. And there's even the reason we don't go after the spiritual at all, really, in this work, we're not taught to, is, like I said, because the traumas have separated us so much from God. And if I say to you anything that makes you feel ashamed about your relationship, or if I tell you you need to use my higher power, my word for God, my whatever, that's going to put more shame on you. It's going to say there's something wrong with me. This lady doesn't understand I can't go there right now because my father beat me so badly. And so we don't start there. But in our training manual, there's a beautiful pyramid, for lack of a better word, like this. And down the middle is a string, if you will, or a line, and it's like the client or patient or participant is right here at the bottom in the middle. And here's the TP. And on the sides are people who can help us. And when we are going through our alcoholism or other things, we are separated from these people. They're out here trying to help us, but we are down here. And as we begin to heal, we begin to go up that line. And we get closer to the people who are able to help us. And right here is God, or our higher power. And so when we begin to heal our past traumas, we get closer to the spiritual. And that is, I have so many clients who say, I don't have a higher power. I don't believe in a higher power. Because of what happened to me as a child, I knew there couldn't be a God. And I don't judge. You know, I didn't feel much warm and fuzzy toward God myself until 55. And I said, you know, my earthly father's love is nothing compared to my heavenly Father's love. It hit me because I got rid of my shame, I got rid of my fear, I got rid of my anger. I felt safe in my body. My adrenaline and cortisol wasn't shooting in all the time, because that's what happened to my body physically. We talked about the amygdala shooting adrenaline and cortisol. When that happens, your body can't do a whole lot of things at once. It shuts down certain things. It shuts down digestion when you're in a fear situation. But it also shuts down the thymus cell, the T cell production. That's why my illnesses were autoimmune. My immune system was totally shot. It was either activated so much that it was aggressive toward parts of my body it shouldn't be, or I was just not getting enough immune cells to handle things.
34 different diseases, autoimmune by 55 years old.
Yeah.
It was eating you alive.
Yeah.
Trauma was eating you alive, wasn't it?
I was in a wheelchair.
You were?
I was in a wheelchair.
55.
2 rheumatologists said you are 100% disabled, and it's hard to be 100% disabled as a CPA. I mean, I wasn't lifting heavy things.
Right.
Yeah, I really was, and I'm testing negative for all those things now.
15 years later.
So yeah, and I had been through therapy. Yeah, I'd been through
That's
therapy
crazy.
for about 10 years.
Yeah.
Had 6 different therapists because they would say, I don't have any tools that can help you. I don't
Sure.
understand why you're not better.
Right.
And finally, it's an interesting story. My daughter actually found this work first. And Brent does a retreat once a year. And she said, for your birthday, I'm going to send you on the retreat.
Oh, how fun.
With this guy. I think you'd benefit from him. And she said, I'm a school teacher, and I can't afford the retreat, but you're going to pay for it, but I'm going to make the reservations for you. So she was very young, just out of college.
Sure, right.
And I went and found this work and had 2 sessions with Brent, went back to a therapist that I had, one of the best for sexual abuse in Mississippi. And I was driving 2.5 hours one way to see her regularly, sometimes once a week, and just not getting better faster. I tested 83 on the dissociative experiences scale. That's how they measure how dissociative you are. How many times a day and how often and in what instances is your body saying, I'm out of here, I'm out of here. You know, I'm not going to focus, I can't think straight.
Yeah.
And after HMR, the same lady retested me with the same test, and I tested 14.
From 80.
And anything over 40 was supposed to be heavily medicated for trauma.
So your brain is just in flight mode.
Yep.
It's not even fight.
And I think that's why I love numbers and did so well, because that's the left brain stuff,
Really?
all the
Yeah,
numbers,
that makes sense.
and I amped it up, and was the best in the class at 350, and the best at this, and the fastest at this. That kept my trauma at bay, because I just kept frantically doing things,
Right.
With the left brain, particularly because the PTSD is here. We now know. I
Yeah.
didn't know at the time,
Right.
but now we know.
Interesting.
My daughter warned you that I talked a lot.
Well, I was just thinking about, what you were saying about the higher power and everything. When I was 19, I had been thrown in jail a couple times because I was just so drunk, and I just had to get away from the alcohol. My family is just all about alcohol, and it's just not working for me. So when I got forced to go to AA, I look at these people that are finding a higher power in Jesus Christ. It's like, you are weak. I'm doing this for me. I'm quitting for me. I've had too much trauma. Nobody's going to help me through this. There's no God that's going to help me through this. Granted, I was 19 and I don't have a fully functioning brain at that point.
yeah.
But you see where I'm at.
And you're invincible.
I've got too much trauma, and I'm not going to let it go. I'll fight this myself. I'll do it. Of course, then when you get 55, like you're saying, everything starts breaking down, your body and then your brain and everything else. But I guess that was the way I went through alcoholism. And we had a guy on here the other day that maybe he had so much more trauma, but he knew how to deal with it better. So he went into AA, and he had the power of the Lord, and he had his higher power, and he helps other people through it, and really is a helping person. I just never found myself to be that kind of person. I just need to get rid of the alcohol, but all of this stuff that you're saying is just hitting so many. I hate to use triggers because that's one of those words nowadays, but you know what I'm saying. There are a lot of those things that I just skipped over and was like, not going to deal with that.
It makes so much sense with your background.
Yeah.
I hope I don't want to make you cry.
Yeah, I will.
But because you lost your and I am too.
Sure.
Because you lost your mother when you were 7.
Sure.
In order to survive, you had to know I can do this myself.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah, right.
So that makes sense. You did it. Not many people can do what you did. I'm just so proud and amazed with what you did with your alcoholism.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's just huge.
Yeah.
It's rare. It's very rare.
Otherwise, I was going to be dead.
Yeah.
You just do whatever you can to just stay alive.
But not everybody
I wish I
does
had all
it.
these tools back then.
Yeah.
Well, part of that's that fight or flight element, and you determined that it was something you had to fight.
Right.
And so you took it straight from that angle, and at that point, it's just you and the addiction.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you weren't given a foundation
Right.
prior to that.
Sure.
Your mom was religious and faithful, but from a different view and from a different scope,
Right.
which didn't connect with you as well.
After the fact.
And then exactly.
Right.
So,
And I think I said that to you. It
Yeah.
was like, I went through that, and it was like, how can there be a God that would let that happen I was 9, maybe 10, but still.
Totally logical thinking
Right,
for a
right.
person that absolutely.
So I don't need that help.
Exactly. I don't want it. I don't want that help anywhere around.
Exactly.
I'm going to do this on my own,
Right,
and I
right.
know I can because I have to survive without a
Sure.
mother.
Right. So,
You know?
I mean, it was interesting having a conversation with somebody that was 30 years sober that had done the right thing through the AA and really helped.
Now wait a minute. I'm not going to let you say you didn't do the right thing.
Well, he did it the more wholesome way, and he took God with him, made the crossover and brought the crossover, whatever they say.
I would say that he did it a different way than you.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
And I wouldn't put a value on it as to say this was the right way versus this is the
No,
wrong
exactly.
way.
I mean, I just went off and had 4 kids. I didn't have the position to be able to go out and get drunk. It's like, okay, well, I'm just going to make this life serious. But I don't have a choice to fall off the wagon.
But many people have 4 kids and don't quit the alcohol.
Right.
Many,
Sure.
many.
That's true. But that was my AA.
Yeah.
That was my higher power.
That was beautiful.
my children.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
It's
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Yeah, it was a
Right.
different calling
Right.
in that sense.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm teary. Dang it.
I'll do it with you.
That's right. So,
But it does make sense, and it helps to make sense of it
Sure.
because when we are triggered, and now we're taught to use the word activated because trigger has a different
Yeah.
meaning in our culture.
Yeah.
But when we are activated, we don't think logically. So
Sure.
anytime a client can start saying, now I'm realizing, it's like, yay, we're winning.
Yeah.
Because you're using this part of your brain to understand.
Sure.
And that's what you're doing.
Right.
That's a
I didn't know
stage
that.
of
That's
healing.
interesting.
Yeah.
So it went to what do they call that? The lizard mind or
Yeah. Yeah.
the basic brain.
Yeah, reptilian
right?
brain.
Reptilian, that's what I'm looking for. So, and then it takes over to the front because that's where you make decisions.
You make your decisions, all your organization, your cognitive decisions, your decisions about, is this good for me or bad? I would
Yeah.
love to do it, but what are the results going to be?
Right.
You know, that's all here.
So that's what you're trying to do, basically, get it from fight or flight to
Exactly.
why am I
Exactly.
flight? Yeah.
Otherwise, the amygdala catches it first and says, is this safe enough for me to think about it?
Sure.
And if the answer is no, you're not going to think about it.
Right.
You're going to have everything happening here.
Yeah.
And it may just be that you need to hit something, you know, but it's all going to come the body, the
Yeah.
lower body portion.
Right,
I
right.
guess that's why C7 is important release point. It's a juncture between those two.
That's interesting because I have a lot of clients with some huge knots right there. You think that's trauma?
I just love it. You're going to be something when you learn
I
this.
know. I find all these new tricks.
You are. Ooh.
So when they're at C7 and there's huge knots there, you feel like that may be from a long years of childhood. It's not just from being a CPA or being a cop or whatever, and I sit in my chair too long or whatever, got these big knots. May not be that, huh?
And it may be they're doing that because of the things they're holding, you know?
Right. Yeah.
You'll find
These are
out.
smart.
You got to know some stuff.
You can send me to school.
I know. I love it. I love it. I want to tell you about our clinical
Yeah,
trials,
tell
too.
me.
But what else do you want to ask me? I feel like I've taken over.
No, I just made a small list of I wanted to talk about the resolution, what you were talking about there. Then we went over 100% disabled and how you came through that. That's really that's what I wanted to talk to, and the religion. I wanted to see how that tied in. I really don't have a whole lot more, so enlighten us.
Well, when I do seminars on this, which I absolutely love to do, I like to do the 34 disease diagnosis, and I'm trying to get a choreographer to help me, because since I was in a wheelchair before all this, I just want to do a song and dance when I name them alphabetically. But it was just a lot, just all over the body. But we have, because it is hard to understand and it's so simple that people don't believe it, we really have needed to get the science behind it. And so we found Dr. Mary Gaddy, who's done this work a while. She's a neurologist at the Billings Clinic in Billings, Montana.
Okay.
And the Billings Clinic, sounds like a rural place, but I'm from a little bitty town, and the Billings Clinic has almost as many doctors, not just practitioners, nurses, but doctors, as my hometown does.
No kidding.
So it's a big place. And she worked with a group of 12, and 2 of those were PhDs who had done other research. And we have an IRB approved. IRB is International Review Board.
Okay.
And once you have to get them to approve a clinical trial ahead of time and say this is worthy of doing. And once they approve the trial, you can publish it internationally. So it's part of typical medical scientific research to say we have approval to do something that might be important to the world.
So who's approving that? Is that a medical? Or
it's an international review board. So I think it's probably a combination of
psychiatric and medicine, maybe?
Probably, I would think.
Yeah, I would think.
And PhD otherwise,
Right.
But I don't know. That's a great question.
Yeah.
We have to ask Dr. Gaddy that. You have to interview Dr. Gaddy. That would be a fun one. And so with 3 to 4 sessions, some people completed 3, and we were hoping for 4 with everybody. 3 or 4 sessions, 67 to 95% of the participants had some somatic symptoms, something hurting in their body, which relates to your work.
Sure.
And after the 3 to 4 sessions only, and a session lasts an hour to an hour and a half, 67% had less dizziness, 70% had less head pain, 79% had improvements in their stomach and bowel issues, 81% improved chest pain, shortness of breath, 89% had less back pain. So you need to learn this, because we're going to put you out of business.
I know. They'll think I'm doing it with massage, and I'm doing it with well, I'm such an awesome massage therapist.
It'll be good for you. Yeah, in your later years, you won't have to work this hard.
That's right.
90% had improvement in their sleeping. 92%, 94% had improvement in their feeling of tired or low energy. 95% had less arm, leg, or joint pain. So those numbers are just...
Well, those are major things.
Yeah.
Those are major things that could really wreck your life.
Yeah.
And I don't think I heard anything less than 75%.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's amazing.
And so that's the physical side. And then the emotional side, and again, 3 to 4 sessions. And see, so much talk therapy, a lot of different modalities say expect 12 to 14 sessions. And we'll do 12 to 14, but you're going to get a lot of results quicker because your body gets to decide. That's the key. Your body's comfortable with what's happening and when we're talking. So with the emotional side, 37% had reduced depression. 44% reduced chronic pain, somatic symptom burden. And I'm using a lot of their terms because it matters to the scientist.
I see.
46% had less PTSD. And that is what I'm just have such a heart for. And this is when I cry over the veterans.
Right.
We just got to get this work to the veterans.
Right.
Because so many of them, as I said, had childhood trauma, and that's why they went into the military.
Right.
48% reduction in anxiety for our test group. So those are some pretty super numbers.
Not as high as the physical ones, but still 40%. That's huge.
With 3 or 4.
Yeah. Maybe because they have less ability to identify as much as they can a physical thing.
Probably so. So the purpose of the clinical trial was to test the use of HMR to improve the physical and biopsychosocial symptoms of chronic pain. And the biopsychosocial is, again, you're feeling it in your body. It's a psychological thing, but you're feeling it in your body.
Yeah,
and prior to the test, those people, half of the participants had at least moderate depression, anxiety, PTSD, and somatic burden. 100% of them had one ACE, adverse childhood experience, those things we talked about earlier. And HMR may be a feasible intervention to address chronic pain and accompanying biopsychosocial symptoms. Unlike other mind-based therapies, HMR participants use their own internal language for identification and resolution of the pain. The trauma imprinting, which is when we catch that icon and imprints in our body, can be gently addressed, and the memory-based components of the pain can be resolved or reduced. And that empowers the participants to improve their own well-being.
I was going to ask you about music. On the on the page, on your page, I don't know if I should be just straight up doing that on the
My daughter's music.
Is that who's doing the singing, and that's your daughter or you?
That's my daughter.
Okay.
And I would love that link too, because she dealt with similar. And a lot of we need to, I don't know if you've seen the words. There's some of those places you can see the words and really tell. It's her first time to do singing.
She did a great job.
She wrote them all. But the words are significant and they do relate to trauma. It's great music.
So, yeah, well, it's professionally done. It's mixed really, really well.
Yeah. She had something very traumatic happen in her life and took a year off of work and found somebody professionally to help her do that. And she wrote the songs.
So that was part of her road to recovery.
Part of her, yep.
I think musicians are often, in some cases, unaware as to what extent their songwriting, both lyrically and musically, really is therapy. And that's one of the ways that people are able to they latch onto it, they identify with it, they follow, as it were, and we call them fans and fan base and all that, but I think in many cases it's people that are identifying with the experiences or the perspectives of the person who's written the song, and also not just with who's written the song, but who's singing the song, who's presenting the song. Some of the music that I grew up with, thinking of the band Heart, and they had a powerful ballad that I was just captured by.
You felt their energy when it,
just deep core inside.
That's the energy frequency.
Then I found out only a matter of a few years back that they didn't write that song. It was written by somebody else sitting behind a desk, and that's what they do for a living, is write songs. And they write them for certain artists, and they played it for the Sisters of Heart, and they owned it. And not only did they own it, but they captured everybody who listened to it. As far as I was concerned, they captured everybody who listened to it. And I was, again, I understood that somebody else wrote it, but I felt they owned it.
Yeah.
And their presentation
they felt it energetically.
Right. And they brought that
Yep.
out. And so many people then identified with that and said, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have a family member who's in a metal band, and it's his band. He's put it together, and all of the musicians that are involved, but it is scream metal, very chaotic, very aggressive. I would go between aggressive and assertive. It's not really assertive. It's more aggressive. And there's definitely a genre of kids that lock on with that. They need that.
It's like plugging in.
It's
I love
like
that you said
plugging
lock
in.
in.
So they get in with that, and he's able to speak their language because they share the same language.
Yeah. Exactly.
And they share the same expression of that. And for him, with the things that he's been through, which was trauma, which was drugs, which was jail, which was just a lot of really, really, really dark and hard things. This is a way that's become a therapy for him, and he's working to, you know, better himself. But part of that is using that as his expression.
Yeah, part of his healing.
Part of his healing.
Well, what's interesting is, you know, music is measured in hertz.
Right.
And there are, I wish I had, frequencies. Yeah, you know the right words. And I've seen the documentation, I don't have it with me today, of how many hertz the color red represents. They measured it. And which notes in which volume relate to red. So if I need red, which is personal power usually, I can get it from the music, or I can get it from breathing red, which is weird as it can be, but it works. It works.
I don't think a lot of people understand really heavy metal music. I seem to think that people think I would want to go to a metal show because I would love to be angry. Well, it's totally the opposite of that. You know, when we go to a heavy metal concert, it blows everything out of your mind, and you're skipping out the front door. You couldn't be any happier. It just purged all of the negativity in your brain, and you just couldn't be any more free coming out of a concert like that. I don't think people understand what heavy metal music does.
I think that
You get it.
I get it, and I think that there are those that go to those shows for different reasons.
You think?
And I think one of them is to be able to let go of all the stuff that they're carrying.
Right.
And that is a venue and a space where they can do that amongst other folks who are experiencing some of the same kinds of emotions and energy.
Slam dancing, you can punch people in the face,
So
and you're supposed to do that. That's
so you
what
can
you're
have
there
a pit
for.
going,
Right.
And folks look forward to that, to get in there and start bouncing around.
Yeah.
But you will have other people that go in there and put razor blades on their shoes.
That's a different kind of hate.
Right? So different thing, because they're going in there to hurt somebody.
Right.
And to scar somebody.
That's true.
Which is very, very different from the person who's just going in there to be with their folks.
Right.
You know, the people that understand and share in the sound that they enjoy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it can be on all sides. Plus, you have people. I've been to my fair share of metal shows. I've been in metal shows. But I've been to my fair share of shows that had pits. And when you get a mosh pit going, things can get out of hand pretty quickly. And you'll see a lot of folks will push themselves up to the sides because they don't want to be a part of what's getting out of hand. They're there to enjoy the music, or they're there to kind of enjoy the spectacle and the music, and it's the whole experience. For them to walk out and feel like, wow, that was a killer show.
Right.
That was amazing.
Right.
And it's a whole different experience.
Yeah. Did you ever get deep into a mosh pit?
I've a couple of times.
Yeah.
I've also been that guy on the edge of the stage that was the bouncer.
Yeah.
So when people would start to climb up onto the stage, I was there to make sure they did not succeed in getting onto the stage.
Yeah.
And normally all they wanted to do was just stage dive back into the folks. However, not everybody wants to catch everybody.
Yeah.
Right? And that becomes an issue for the venue, and it becomes an issue for the band.
Yeah.
And people want to point fingers as who's responsible and all of that.
Right.
So there was kind of a discussion that it's better for them to kind of fall back as opposed to fly.
Running stage dive.
So we never threw anybody off stages, but I definitely prevented them creatively from being able to get up to where the musicians were or get past the edge of the stage.
Yeah.
And, I didn't have that in the bands that I was in. We didn't have that kind of emotion.
Yeah.
We weren't tapping into that. We weren't looking for that. But for the bands that I was in, we were very committed to the music and to the lyrics that we were singing and presenting and believing, and our music did not create that kind of frenetic energy, which was by design.
Yeah.
We weren't addressing that. That wasn't something we identified with. So it was very interesting to come from both sides, being the guy that's on the stage, being the guy that's on the edge of the stage, being the guy back behind the mixer or behind the monitor board.
Right.
Everybody's got their own, perspective to kind of what's going down and how it's going down.
But even if you're punching and swinging and, and somebody goes down, everything stops. You get that person back up. He's one of us. And then punch him in the face.
I love
so it's,
it.
You're all in it.
Spoken like a true mosher. I want to make sure you're standing when I hit you.
You're good? Okay. Boom.
Exactly.
Well, this has been such an interesting conversation. I've learned so much, and I'm just so excited to learn more about this. I will be emailing you. What more can you teach me or learn, and what direction? And so, because this is very interesting to me in what I do.
Yeah. I'd love for you to be doing it, especially because you work with so many veterans here in the Monterey area.
Yeah, this is a center for.
And I realized we took a little break. I said the percentage of reduction is not the percentage of people who had a reduction. It's the percentage of reduction in a person's body from the clinical trials. I had a 37% reduction in my depression. So somebody said 45 and somebody said a lower number. And so the average average percent of reduction. So it wasn't people thing. It's a reduction in the symptoms themselves.
I was wondering how you came up with that kind of number.
Yeah, well,
because it's just so, what's the word, oblique. I don't know. It's just not, especially in an emotional, what percentage of,
It's average for those people that reported.
A lot of people, I see.
And they had 4 questionnaires that they filled out periodically during the time between the sessions, because we don't do sessions back to back to back. It was over a period, you take a week off and then come back, or take a month off and then come back.
Sure, yeah.
So you're rating your symptoms as they are decreasing or increasing, but all of these were in the decreasing side, which was wonderful.
Right.
And there was just one other thing I thought about talking to you about. For my healing, I wrote a book. And I wrote it in the form of a play because of the voices. Because my worst trauma was when I was 12. And I didn't have the words to explain what was happening. I thought I was telling my mother and grandmother, but they weren't getting the message or weren't willing to do what needed to be done. And so the voices were important to me. and it was presented as a play by Louisiana State University Theater Group. And what was so amazing, the director and assistant director, the assistant director particularly, had her family come to the presentation. And she said she had never been able to tell them what happened to her as a child. And she invited them as a way to let them see what had happened to her.
Wow.
And the lady who played my part, I got to see her rehearse twice, and she cried both times. And I said, are those tears real, or because they fit the situation? And she said, no, those are my tears. And her husband came up to me after the play and said, none of her therapy has helped her like having this role, being you in this play.
That's
so that was meaningful.
Yeah, I bet.
One of the most meaningful. But I wrote it as a pseudonym, Cade Soleil. Cade just came to me because I wanted to use Karen, but I didn't want to. My mother was still alive, and family members didn't want her disrupted at that point, and she was in denial still.
Yeah.
And the lady who was helping get the theater group together researched the word cade. A cade is a lamb whose mother basically leaves it.
Did you know that when you put it?
Nope.
Get out of here.
I just
That's
knew
crazy.
Cade was close to Karen, and it came to me immediately. And then Soleil, because the first time I realized I had anything to bring to the world in a bright manner was when I had my first job out of college, and they nicknamed me Sunshine. And so
Solaris.
I did Cade Soleil. So
perfect.
Yeah, that's fun. That's fun.
That's awesome.
They came right together.
And then, as I said, my daughter has written music about trauma-related things that's very uplifting.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that. How did that work? She wrote music. I know we just talked about this and I went through it, but so did she know that she was using that to heal, or did she do this and then, wow, that healed me?
I think it's kind of like my play. You know, she's doing it to heal herself.
Yeah, okay.
But she did it professionally with some professional musicians.
Oh, interesting.
To help her, because she knew it was important.
Right.
And the words are so empowering for people.
Yeah, right. How did that feel to have somebody being you on stage? How weird was that?
Well, it was awesome, and I was able to invite some relatives who had not really grasped what had happened in my own family. And later they said, I wondered what was happening behind those doors. I knew there was something there.
Yeah.
Because my family was the family in the community that if a child had had a problem, the police would have brought them to our family to take care of them, you know, to foster them. Well respected, well taken care of. We hid the PTSD from the veterans so well. I think I mentioned to you when I was 11, my father was outraged one day, and it was so frightening to me, and he said, it was Veterans Day. And he said, you just don't understand. You don't appreciate what we did.
Right.
And I didn't have a clue.
Why would you?
I had no clue what he had done.
At 12.
And he was not able to tell us at that point.
Right.
So,
was he in Korea?
No, he was in Germany.
In World War II?
He was in Germany on the back of a tank with a weapon on the outside of the tank.
Kidding.
Yep, on the outside of the tank.
Wow. Put me on the back.
Yeah, and I think I told you he had cancer and was dying of cancer, and had always said, if I have cancer, because there were not good prognosis for cancer back then, he said, if I ever have cancer, I'm going to take my own life. And he gave us 18 months after his diagnosis to do whatever we could do to try to talk him out of it.
Right.
And then he rented Saving Private Ryan and watched that movie in order to give himself the gumption to shoot and kill himself.
Yeah, right.
And he did.
And join his buddies.
Right, right. But that's
it's brutal, but it's not.
Yeah.
I can't say I wouldn't do the same thing.
Yeah.
You know.
But that's another reason my heart is so much for veterans.
For veterans.
And it makes me very happy to realize I've been able to heal to that level.
You know,
because I wasn't always wanting to help.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Well, you were
I was running.
Traumatized by it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now you're coming full circle
Yeah.
to help somebody else's dad,
Yeah.
so they don't give their child the trauma that you had.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
It's perfect for veterans, but
Oh, it's
veterans
perfect.
trust veterans. They don't trust little old gray-haired ladies too well.
Yeah, we had that talk too when we were talking. I tried so many times to try to get in with the VA, but I'm not a veteran, so they don't even want to talk to me. It's
Yeah.
like, but I could probably help, but they don't return my calls, But I'm a massage therapist. I could probably help.
Well, maybe the
But if I was one of
combination
them, like you said,
Yeah.
it'd be different.
And the combination of what you do, and now we have clinical trial evidence of reduction in the somatic pain and the emotional issues.
Yeah.
So,
So is this, now say somebody's watching this podcast and say, oh my God, they've been talking about me for an hour. I want to try some of this, was it
HMR.
HMR? Where could they do that? Can they do it online, or is there people in each city, or is this something that's fairly new?
There is. We'll put the website,
Okay.
healingdimensions.com
Okay.
is Brent's website.
Oh, good,
And
good.
he has listed on there the practitioners who are certified.
Right.
And we can now, thanks to COVID, we can do it over Zoom. And it
Perfect.
works absolutely beautifully.
The sessions or the training?
Both.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Both.
See.
So people who want to train, we love for people to add it to the psychiatrist, psychologist to add it to their practice, the massage therapist,
Yeah.
anesthesiologist, like we said, to add it to their practice. But you can also find a practitioner, and it shows the different licensures.
Even if you weren't a professional at it, as long as these people that are doing this type of work understand it, they don't necessarily have to be certified, but this is something that people need to know.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know.
that's my goal, that we get grandmothers
Right.
doing it for their grandchildren.
Exactly.
You do it for your
Right.
family members. It's
Right.
that simple. Train the children. My daughter has taught her children. They'll come home when they were very young and say, I'm angry today. Where do you feel the anger? I feel it right here. What do you want to do with it? I want to throw it away. Well, what do you replace it with? I want to replace it with blue. Okay, do that.
Yeah.
So that's a version of this we call color replacement.
I see.
You just get rid of the negative stuff, put in something to replace it,
Right.
the energy frequency that you need.
I've always felt like there's like a center spot in the very center of my brain that is just shut off. It's like dead. And it's like, I wonder, as I'm talking to you, is that maybe one of those points?
Yes.
I've always felt that there's something missing. And it's like, because I was born so premature and I was such a drug addicted baby to alcohol, it's like, well, maybe that didn't completely develop. But now in talking to you, and I'm thinking, I wonder if that's like a red stone in my elbow. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well,
I don't know.
we call that the icon or the metaphor describing what your body feels. And in your description, it's a void.
It's a void.
It's a blackness
exactly.
or a fog,
Right.
and that's
Emptiness.
That's just like the red rock.
Really?
It's just a different description.
Right. Maybe we can fire that little part of my brain up.
Yeah, we'll
That'd be
work on
kinda
that.
interesting.
We'll work on it. We don't know what we'll create here. We have Michael's Gift. Michael's Gift is a nonprofit.
Okay.
And we're getting groups together groups who do this work, to go to Asheville for the hurricanes, and now L.A. for sure. This work was done by Brent, Oklahoma City bombing, the tsunami in Japan,
Have mercy.
plane crashes.
Yeah.
So he's used it in similar traumas.
Right.
We certainly do with individuals. I love working with the individuals, but my real purpose, I feel, my spiritual purpose in life is to get more people trained in it.
Exactly.
I'd love to go into a VA hospital and help train the psychologists and psychiatrists so that they can do it. We just need to get into more institutions and have it done as a part of like we have at Angola.
Right. Well, I'm a fan. I'm in. Let's spread the word.
Oh, thank you.
It's so awesome. We've learned so much today. I appreciate so much you coming in today. I know you're on your way out tomorrow to head on home. You didn't have to do this, but I sure appreciate you stepping in.
Well, I had a great massage yesterday,
Did
too.
ya?
I feel great.
Right
yes.
on. Sounds like a Yelp review. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you got any value, hit the subscribe button. I love you guys. Talk to you soon. See ya.